Do video games need to change over time? Does every game have to innovate on the previous one? Are games supposed to achieve a constant stream of new highs, each game getting better and better as hardware improves and the dev team becomes bolder? What necessitates change? Sure, you could argue that the driving forces of capitalism likely encourage dev teams to make changes to their style and adapt their games to try to sell it to existing fans as well as new fans. But that's the less fun, perhaps more realistic way to look at things. Yes, video games change due to a multitude of reasons. However, in my opinion, the most fundamental reason for change, from an artistic perspective, is growth. The ability to take your knowledge of something and apply it to a new concept you haven't worked on before is something humanity has been doing since the beginning of time. Well, since the beginning of humanity's time. Humans have managed to harness fundamental principles of the world, and through time create things like electricity, all in the name of progress and growth. For the artist, growth is a great way to branch out of your comfort zone. If you try to create the same thing too many times, it inevitably becomes less fun. Once you cooked your 500th burger, the 501st doesn't seem all that exciting compared to your first few. And yes, cooking is an art form, even burgers. In the creation of video games, like many things in today's world, the ideas have become tied to profit, which comes with inherent risks associated with making anything entirely new. When you have a formula that works, why change it? If people love your game for its mechanics or its story, why go around changing that up? What if you lose the game's identity when you do that? What if you tick off tons of old fans and fail to attract new ones? And of course, to investors, trying something new equates to risk, and risk is a surefire way to make them sell out the moment it starts to look like your product might fail. It's a shame, really, that so many art forms are held captive by the grips of investors and the art's ability to move capital. However, for me to sit here on my high horse and act like capitalism has ruined art would be ignoring the entirely real positive effects that capitalism has had on art. Capitalism has forced the gaming industry to innovate, which is not negative at all. The pressure to do better and better is certainly formed by the assumption that this is an industry where creators can make substantial financial gains, an industry that has grown into one of the largest media industries in the world, surpassing film and music, and it did so in roughly 40 to 50 years. Of course, we could get into the bad and good things about capitalism as done for video games, but I think the key takeaway from this point is that there lies an extremely fine balance between making art for art and making art for money. To me, the clearest example of a franchise that simultaneously existed to create art and passion and money is Mario, believe it or not. Mario is a series that has adapted over many years. The games have not only innovated on its original 1985 formula out of creativity, but also for profit. A new Mario game is exciting and profitable. Each game seems to define a generation of kids and brings more people into the world of Nintendo. Beyond fans and gamers, the games themselves have affected the industry as a whole. Super Mario 64 was revolutionary to gaming. Super Mario Bros. Itself and the NES are arguably the reason video games became popular again after the market crashed in 1983. Nintendo single-handedly brought gaming back to the United States, and now almost every household has at least one gaming system. For those of you who don't know, I'm a massive Nintendo fan. I've been playing Mario games since I was a small child. Some of my first experiences with video games were playing Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. 3 on my aunt's NES in 2005. I spent a lot of time playing these old games, enjoying every moment of it. Mario is a franchise that has impacted my life in an extremely substantial way. I played it during some of the best and worst years of my life, whether it be as a young kid or going through my parents' divorce. I've stated before that Super Mario Galaxy is my favorite game of all time, and maybe I'll cover it someday, but for now, I want to focus on 2D Mario games, as I've been playing them a lot lately for my second channel, The Geek Factor Plays. Shameless plug aside, this video will be part of a trilogy of videos all talking about 2D Mario games. The first, today's video, is about Super Mario Bros. 3 and how it built the foundations on which every future Mario game sits, even beyond the 2D ones. I think Super Mario Bros. 3 marks a turning point for the franchise. It is the most approachable game up to that point, and is one of the most innovative Mario games ever, even to this day. The features of so many Mario games are either copied or rooted from Mario 3, and it's easy to see why. It's a terrific game. It expands on everything the first Mario game set out to do. More levels, more power-ups, more secrets, more story, though it's not really saying much, more challenges, more themes, just more of everything Nintendo set out to do with the original. You might be wondering why I'm choosing to talk about the Super Mario Bros. 3 game rather than the original Super Mario Bros. Game. The original, for everything it does right, is not where the vast majority of Mario games get a lot of their core mechanics or themes. Like, sure, Mario runs and jumps, everyone knows that, but if Super Mario Bros. 3 laid the foundation for other Mario games to build upon, then Super Mario Bros. 1 is more like the ground that the foundation sits on. You don't need me to tell you why Super Mario Bros. 1 is so important to Mario games or gaming as a whole. For a lot of people, Super Mario Bros. Was the first video game they played. It offered a great introduction to gaming and certainly has features that Mario 3 built upon. Mario 1 introduces many key concepts like levels, worlds, power-ups, Bowser. It was a good starting place, so it's easy to see how and why Nintendo managed to expand on that initial project. But Mario 1 feels like a first game. It's good, but it's got some issues. The graphics don't really hold up the best, some glitches can break the game entirely, and I don't think anyone would generally regard Mario 1 as the best Mario game. Don't get me wrong, it's still a great game and a masterpiece in its own right, especially considering its influence on the gaming industry, but when you start asking people about what is the best 2D Mario game, or Mario game in general, Super Mario Bros. 3 was always a contender for first place, and for good reason. It stands the test of time as one of the most accessible and fun Mario games to exist. Super Mario Bros. 3 takes everything the first two Mario games did in Mario 2 in Japan, not so much the US, and expands on them in a meaningful and innovative way. Hi, Future Garrett here. I realize that some people who watch my content may not know the basic history of Mario games and why there is a difference between Mario 2 in Japan and Mario 2 in the US, so I'm going to do like a very, very brief timeline of Super Mario Bros. Games leading up to Mario 3 and a little bit beyond. So forgive me if you already know this information, but I'm trying to help the normies in the audience. Love you guys. I love normies too. Super Mario Bros. Released as a launch title for the NES alongside Duck Hunt in 1985 here in the US. It was a solid game. It featured 8 worlds, each one with 4 levels and fun challenges. There was a ton of potential here. Shortly after this game was developed and released, the 8 or so devs working on Mario 1 began to work on a sequel. The team had plenty of new ideas for levels, so they just kept making them. A pretty common trend for sequels in Nintendo games, funny enough. This led to Super Mario Bros. 2, or as we know it in the United States, Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. The Lost Levels is a really hard game. I've been playing it on my gaming channel lately. You'll see what I mean if you go watch that. It's not easy. It expects a lot from players and even trolls players to absurd degrees, hiding blocks in inconvenient places, having warp pipes that send you backwards in the world instead of forwards. It's just really hard. Because of this difficulty, Nintendo of America felt that the US audience was probably too bad at video games and people wouldn't enjoy playing it. Thus we got Super Mario Bros. 2, the US edition. This game is a reskin of a Japanese game known as Doki Doki Panic. This game is very different from the original Super Mario Bros., but its influence on Mario games still exists to this day. The 4 playable characters, Mario, Luigi, Toad, and Peach, are all playable characters in Super Mario 3D World, and they play slightly differently, just like they did back in Mario 2. Mario 3, the game that we're focusing on today, was released in Japan in 1988 and here in North America in 1990. We'll get more into this game later, but just for right now, know it's a pretty big deal. Beyond this came Super Mario Land on the Game Boy in 1989 and Super Mario World in 1991, with Super Mario Land 2 coming out in 1992. It then took Nintendo 14 years to release another 2D Mario game with the introduction of the new Super Mario Bros. Series, a series that was loved at its initial release but slowly looked down on as new games kept coming out over the course of 6 years between 2006 and 2012. But we're not going to focus on that era of Mario games today. Okay, there, that's your rough little timeline with not too much detail. Let's get back to the main focus of the video, Super Mario Bros. 3. Super Mario Bros. 3 always gave me this vibe of grandeur. This is a peak NES game. It takes full advantage of the hardware. This is a peak Mario adventure, and at the time, it was the biggest and most ambitious Mario game out there. I think this is best exemplified by the theme of the game, which is meant to resemble a stage play. The curtain rises and falls at the beginning and the end of the game, the players enter stage right and exit stage left, all of which contribute to the overall feeling of some sort of magical, grand adventure. The story is not completely disconnected from the previous games. It builds off the original Mario story with a fun twist. Instead of invading the Mushroom Kingdom and kidnapping Peach, Bowser has all the Koopalings take over multiple kingdoms throughout the world. While Mario and Luigi are away saving these other kingdoms, the Mushroom Kingdom is defenseless. Bowser uses this as an opportunity to kidnap Princess Peach. This is really great stuff compared to the first. Sure, future Mario games did utilize twists like this, but they seem to do so in ways that feel like a repeat of Mario 3, or just maybe do it a little worse, but that's a point for a later video. Perhaps one of the most important things that Super Mario Bros. 3 builds upon from the first game is power-ups. In the original Super Mario Bros. We had the Magic Mushroom, the Fire Flower, and the Starman. The Magic Mushroom allows Mario to grow in size, thus allowing him to break blocks above his head, as well as take a hit of damage without dying. The Fire Flower allows Mario to shoot fireballs and attack enemies from a distance. Finally, the Starman allows Mario to become invincible to enemies for a short time. These all return in Mario 3 and haven't really changed much since their original outing. Alongside these returning power-ups are Mario 3's new power-ups, which include the Super Leaf, the Frog Suit, the Tanuki Suit, the Hammer Suit, and the P-Wing. Something that I love about all these power-ups is how they complement the core mechanics of Mario. If the player builds up enough momentum, the Super Leaf allows Mario to fly for a short period of time. The Frog Suit allows for much greater mobility when swimming at the cost of mobility on land. The Tanuki Suit allows for flight just like the Super Leaf, but also allows for temporary invincibility when transforming into a statue. The Hammer Suit doesn't really complement Mario's core mechanics in the same way as the others, but it does prevent Mario from sliding, as well as granting him the ability to throw hammers at enemies, which is much better than the Fire Flower in some cases. It can take out things like thwomps and boos, something that the Fire Flower simply can't do. Lastly, the P-Wing is just a Super Leaf with infinite flight for one level or until Mario takes a hit. In essence, these power-ups all affect how Mario moves throughout a level to some capacity, allowing for Mario's core mechanics to be switched up in a meaningful way. That's exactly what power-ups are supposed to do. Having the Super Leaf not only allows for greater ascension, but also careful descension. This is really awesome because it takes Mario's biggest ability, jumping, and gives the player far greater reach. These are all things that future Mario games replicate in some manner. Super Mario World gives us the Cape Feather, allowing for even more flight, which does take some skill to master, and easy descension by holding down the jump button instead of tapping it rapidly like players had to do in Mario 3 with the Super Leaf. Super Mario Bros. 3 sets the standard for what power-ups in Mario games should be. Items that expand on Mario's core mechanics, such as defeating enemies or jumping. This is the sort of thing that all future Mario games should innovate upon. I was actually disappointed at the number of power-ups in Super Mario World. It went down. I felt it would be natural to have at least the same amount of power-ups as Mario 3, but the Yoshis in Super Mario World have their own special abilities depending on the color and what Koopas you eat, so in some ways, it kind of makes up for it. Super Mario Bros. 3 sets the standard for a lot of things in a lot of Mario games moving forward in more areas than just power-ups. Take, for example, world themes. In Super Mario Bros. 1 and the Lost Levels, we saw various themes portrayed, typically grassy land, oceans, snow, and even sky themes. Mario 3 takes these ideas and fleshes them out, increasing the cohesiveness of each world. World 1, Grassland, very creative name I know, sets a standard for future Mario games. Every Mario game up until Mario Wonder kinda follows this trend of grassy lands for its first world theme. Maybe not the Super Mario Land games, they're a little different, but the rest do. And for good reason, it's an easy, digestible theme that attracts both new and old players. Every world beyond this has its own style as well. World 2 is a desert, World 3 is an ocean, World 4 is big stuff, World 5 is sky themed, World 6 is ice themed, etc., etc. A lot of these themes are repeated in future Mario games. The theming of each world makes Mario's adventure feel bigger. Mario is traveling across the entire world, and seeing him in these different themed environments certainly helps that feeling, which is heightened even more by the fact that there are now world maps. In the first couple of Mario games, levels were just separated by a simple black screen displaying the number of lives that Mario had left, as well as the world and the course number of said world on that screen. This sort of led me to feel like Mario's adventure was just on one boring straight path. Couple this with the fact that each level starts with a castle he just left, it made the journey in the original Mario game feel small. I don't know, I always got the vibe that I wasn't going all too far because there was no real sense of distance with these worlds. Super Mario Bros. 3 fixes a lot of that for me. World maps feel like a natural upgrade to the black screen. They set the tone for all levels within a world and contribute to the feel-good nature of navigating your way from one side of the world to the other. For example, World 1 takes place on a single screen. To my knowledge, it's the only world that takes place on a single screen. I guess if you count the Warp World, maybe not, I don't know. The player starts on the top left side of the screen with the castle you're heading towards in the bottom right. There are clear paths that the player can take, including a shortcut that is locked away from the time being. On this path, there are some optional routes and little bonuses. Although levels 3 and 4 can be skipped entirely if you wish to make a mad dash for the end of the world, in doing so you miss out on the opportunity to gain power-ups and visit a Toad House, as well as other intriguing little secrets. That little shortcut gets unlocked by clearing up the first fortress. This is useful because it allows players to skip the first few levels if they get a game over. World 1 does a particularly good job of setting up the rest of the game. It feels like each level explores a mechanic that will come up again later. World 1 itself is an introduction to how worlds work. As I mentioned, it's the only world to take place on a single screen. World 1 is simple and easy to understand. You move from one corner to the opposite corner. It's very simple. In World 2, you move from the left side of the kingdom across to the right across two different screens. Other worlds change it up, such as World 4 having the player start in the right and move to the left, or World 5 which has you start in the ground and then finish up in the sky. Some of the world themes here become series staples for Mario games to come. Desert, sky, water, grasslands, and the final lava fire world are all over modern Mario games these days. Another key feature, the bosses of Super Mario Bros. 3 have become staples within the Mario franchise. Boom Boom and the Koopalings are some of the most iconic Mario bosses, which is sad because they kinda suck in 90% of the games they're in. Fighting these bosses again in Mario 3 while getting footage just felt kinda boring, and that's not really Mario 3's fault, it's the fault of the games for reusing the same bosses over and over and over again to the point where they just feel mundane. The first few times you fight Boom Boom, it's actually kind of a lot of fun. As a kid, he actually gave me trouble. Many of my runs were ruined by the fortress in Boom Boom. I know Boom Boom is memed hard on today, but for the third Mario game, I think he was a good mid-level boss. He's got a small variety of attacks that he switches up sometimes, and the layout of the room can sometimes change and meaningfully impact the fight, kind of. The Koopalings, of course, are much trickier with distinct themes and more unique attack patterns. I know that some of the Koopalings do repeat their own attack patterns, such as Larry and Morton sharing attacks, which isn't the best, but they change out the layout of the boss room to make up for that sort of thing, which I think is fine. Super Mario World is very guilty of this as well, with Ludwig being its only unique boss fight. Super Mario World takes the idea of world themes and expands on it by giving us one cohesive and connected world. It takes the idea of secret exits and secret stages and turns the dial up to 11. There are 2 entirely secret worlds in Super Mario World. Super Mario Bros. 3 did have a couple secret exits which used warp whistles to speed up the game for players who were crafty enough to find them, but Super Mario World expands on that greatly. With the addition of an entire world, players can only escape via secret exits. Actually, there are 2 worlds that do this. Star Road, the first secret world, opens up another secret world, which has really challenging levels and has a really cool reward for completion that I will not spoil. I know the game is literally 30 years old, who cares? I know, but I still don't want to spoil it. When I think about which Mario games are the most monumental for the series, Super Mario Bros. 3 really is that game. From the start, it presents itself as a bolder and more exciting Mario game than those before it. The innovations put forth by Mario 3 have continued to inspire other Mario games even today. The curtain rises, revealing Mario and Luigi hopping around having a blast before opening straight into the first world. Players journey across 8 different worlds, each with its own immersive theme, and finally, you confront Bowser after defeating his military and all other kingdoms around the world. As you dodge and weave your way past Bowser, he finally crashes down to the floor of his castle, falling into the depths below. You've won. You reunite with Peach and the day is saved. Bowser feels like a real threat this time. The whole game you've been fighting his underlings, but now you're fighting the real thing. In the original Mario, you fought copycats of Bowser that looked just like him, and the fight evolves a little bit in difficulty, but Mario 3's setup is much more impactful, and that the final fight with Bowser feels much more, well, final. This is what it's all been leading up to. Bowser watches a single man and his goofy-ass brother rampage through their army across 7 kingdoms, all the way to him. Even when facing a man who single-handedly destroyed his kingdom and destroyed his prospects for military conquest, Bowser doesn't flinch. He's ready to take down Mario without hesitation, yet the player perseveres. This might just be me, but Bowser always felt genuinely threatening in these older games. Super Mario World and Super Mario Bros. 3 probably have the best Bowser fights simply because of their presentation and theme. Getting to him is challenging enough, but it gets worse when you realize that Bowser isn't afraid of Mario, even after seeing what Mario is capable of. Either that or Bowser really is just that narcissistic and doesn't value his people. Either way, Bowser comes off as very threatening, especially for a kid's game if you stop to think about it for more than 2 seconds. Super Mario Bros. 3 felt like a necessary change to the Mario formula. The core functionality of Mario's running and jumping is still there, but it's built upon in meaningful and new ways. It's easy to imagine a world where the developers didn't see a need to improve with Mario 3, but rather just make another collection of trickier levels with maybe a couple of sprinkles of new ideas thrown in, like they did with Mario 2. But it's clear that Miyamoto and the team wanted something bigger and more ambitious with Mario's third game. On one hand, it's clear to me that this change was made in part to sell more copies of the game. It's unlikely that people would pay full price for a game that they've basically already played twice. On the other hand, this small, passionate team of about 20 to 30 people, according to Super Mario Wiki, don't at me if I'm wrong, clearly approached Mario 3 with more than a monetary incentive. They had an artistic drive to make the game more approachable, bigger in every way, and above all else, more fun. For a long time after Mario 3, it felt like Mario games were just coming out because Nintendo thought they were easy cash cows. From 2006 to 2013, it felt like we were getting a major Mario game almost every single year. Hell, we saw 2 games in the same year in 2012, and most of these games, particularly the 2D games, did not innovate in meaningful ways as previous Mario games did. If Super Mario Bros. 3 was the foundation on which to build new Mario games on top of, the Nintendo team left that foundation there and forgot the house. They just kept slapping random shit on the foundation, occasionally putting up a wall here or there. That is to say, they didn't take what was given to them with Mario 3 and change it or innovate beyond it. They in fact took what Mario World did and copied that as well in many respects. Change is necessary. We've seen what happens to a team of talented developers is forced to change and innovate. They do a good job. Change is good. It forces us to step beyond our comfort zones and vices to truly grow. Why should art be any different? Is art not a reflection of one's own ideas presented unto the world? Should your art not reflect that growth? Sometimes it's easy to stay in our comfort zones. It's easy to stay in the same job, the same school, hang out with the same people, adhere to the same ideologies, and never look beyond the very fragile echo chamber that we've become complacent in. But once you begin to look beyond that, once you begin to let go of your preconceived notions of art, of anything really, that's when you realize there was really never anything to hold on to in the first place. You're an infinite expanse of ideas and creativity. You are not a small collection of ideas. You are not a brain floating in a bag of skin. You're all of it. The art you produce isn't the paint on a canvas. That's you. The music you make isn't the notes to be critiqued, but an extension of yourself that you let the world partake in. Of course, this necessitates a deeper philosophical discussion, but on a practical level, the death of art comes when an artist becomes too comfortable with what they are doing. My art is making YouTube videos. Before making silly Minecraft videos, I spent years trying to find my way in music and or politics. I had become complacent in what I was doing. Then I took a risk, wrote a script, edited a video, and at the time of writing the script, that video has now 1 million views and many comments and likes. And it's about a game that I am very passionate about, and I've been playing since I was a kid. You know, Minecraft, we all know it. I'm sorry, it's Minecraft. Yeah, it's Minecraft, whatever, and moving on. We see this all the time in game development. Hell, we see this all the time in art in general. This is why the next video in this trilogy have loosely tied together ideas about the importance of art, self-expression, and change, all told through the weird vehicle of silly Mario games, is about the death of art. Where does art go to die? What causes something to lose all that charm and creativity that once characterized it? What happens when your creation becomes more of a contractual obligation rather than something you enjoy making? I feel a little silly that I'm using Mario games as a vehicle to express a desire to see more people express their art in an economic landscape that is increasingly more corporate, but it feels necessary. I know I didn't go into super deep detail with every enemy, level, item, and feature of Super Mario Bros. 3, but I don't think I needed to. That's not the point of this. Everything from world themes to power-ups to the grand adventure itself, Mario 3 is a truly wonderful game, a nearly perfect game to many people. And if you haven't played this game before, I recommend playing it on Nintendo Switch Online. If you don't have that, well, I won't encourage you to download illegal ROMs of the game, but that is something you are capable of doing. You shouldn't do it, but you can. If you made it this far into the video, you're probably thinking, why the hell is this guy talking about like art and the philosophy of art in his Super Mario Bros. 3 video? Then I'm sorry, I kind of tricked you into it, didn't I? I didn't really mean to, I'm just more or less word vomiting onto a Google Doc, but I think the overall point still stands. Mario 3 innovated and set up the future for what Mario games became, and in my next video we'll talk about how the franchise failed to move beyond that. What other games have fallen into a similar trap? How can artists and game devs climb out of that wicked rut of complacency and repetition? For now, I want to thank you for watching this video. If you want to support me more officially, consider becoming a member. There isn't much there now, but I do plan on having videos up earlier, as well as exclusive videos for my members. If I ever live stream, VODs will be exclusive to members only, and you should also check out the gaming channel. I'm trying to play more on there and have a good time, but I want to give you guys a personal touch of who I am and what my life is kind of like. But after all, this is my channel. You're here to listen to me say silly things about video games. If you want to see more of that without the script and without all the fancy editing that I do, then you should check out my gaming channel. Currently right now we're sitting at about 17,000 subscribers. I like to talk about this all the time in my videos, but we're sitting around 17,000 subscribers, and I'm just really thankful and really happy that my channel continues to grow. I really hope you guys look forward to the next video about New Super Mario Bros. U. That's it. That's the one we're talking about. And I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye bye.